Okay, today we're back on the Mustang, and if you've ever wanted to know about doing the double din upgrade inside the Mustang, I'm going to give you how I'm tackling it. So if you're interested in changing your single din radio out on the earlier Mustangs to the double din, there's some things you need to know about and some things that you can do, and there's a lot of advice out there, but I've chosen to sort of forge my own path, if you will. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's the way I'm going about it. So if you're interested, stick around. Okay, so I've got my panels here. No, I don't have them both. Hold on. Let me get the other panel. Now I have my comparison panels for you to see what I mean. If you're not familiar with it, I'm sure you are, but I'm just going to recap. A double din is obviously the larger stereo panel. On the right is the double din. It's a little more modern. Some of the buttons have changed. And on the left is what traditionally comes out of this vehicle. Now mine was hacked to pieces, so I got one of these from a junkyard on the left, and on the right I got one of these from a junkyard, and I wasn't sure which way I would go, but the more I've messed around with it, the more I thought, well, let's just go right on ahead and do it. So there's a lot structurally you can see that's different. Here the radio sits further forward in the single din bezel, and the double din it sits a bit more recessed. Now if you look at these areas here and here, that's about the same distance. So there's some differences too on the back of the dashboard. So those buttons are going to hit some things, and you're going to have to clear that out, and you're going to have to make some room, or you could trim away the dashboard. I'm going to show you how I did this. So this here is the one that we're using in the car. This one is a perfectly good example, and you'll notice it has this rail here that I harvested from my old broken unit, and I'll cover that in just a second, so stick with me. On the other side. Okay, so now we're in the car, and you're going to see some things. I've trimmed back this. Most of this was hacked away. I did have to clearance some of this for the radio for it to fit. What I chose to do was use this, which is from the other single din bezel. And then I located it to where the radio will sit in here in the right spot. And I wanted this because, for a very specific reason, is because the kit, the Metra kit, or Scotia, or whatever it is, I forget the brand name, has something that rides along that, and it really locks the radio in place. Now I'm not completely done installing the stereo and doing all the brackets, so we'll do that together. But I wanted to show you what I've done is I've used some JB Weld and made a perch so that it sits on here. So now this is part of the dashboard. This is all part of the dashboard here. If you want to ever take the dashboard out, you'll have to unbolt it from there. And if you can see, I made an adapter bracket and relocated that because this used to screw into those holes. I pressed this bolt in here. This is a pressed in bolt, and then I threaded it, and it's tightened up, and that's not going anywhere. I don't think there's anything stronger. That is where the radio is going to sit onto. And to be perfectly honest with you, I could probably put it in right now and be done. But I think I want to put one more bracket in there, and we'll do that together. So now let's go over to the radio. Okay, now we're at the radio, and you can see that I've got the kit installed. the front kit. It bolts together on the side of this stereo. This is a Pioneer unit, and just seems to just be going together really nice. And on the back, you will notice the bracket I was talking about. Now, the bracket, oddly enough, was covering up that plug right there. So I had to like notch it out. But we're not talking about, this is super light. If you ever felt like an OE stereo, this is, I would say this is less than a third the weight of an original Ford radio. So there's not a whole lot of weight there. So that bracket locks onto, if you can see it, that rail that I bonded back into the car. It's both bolts screwed in, and it's also JB welded to the frame. That thing does not move. So now, if, like I said, if you're wondering, I'm going to give you the kit. The kit to install this into any Ford, it's a Metra kit. It's that part number right there. So this is that kit mounted to this radio that came in that box. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to the car with the radio and put it in and see where it sits. Because I had to let it cure. It's still a little bit tacky, but it's fine. It's fine. All right, without trying to do this with one hand and wiggle you guys all around and make you seasick, you can see how this will slide onto that spot there. And I'm going to very carefully slide that in with one hand. And as you can see already, that radio is in place. Now the only thing that I need to do is, I could obviously just sort of leave it there and then, you know, whatever, but it doesn't have anything behind it to keep it from continuing to slide down that rail, and it needs to sit a certain distance in there, like that. It needs to sit a certain distance in there, so when the bezel's on, it'll be flush with the bezel. So that's where I need to make some sort of a mounting bracket so that these two tabs here catch and keep it the right distance, and then it'll sort of keep it from jiggling about. So that's what we're going to do next, as I'm going to go ahead and fabricate something for that. And then we'll get the radio fully installed. That went through. Alright, well that's nice. Alright, so that's exactly what we'll do. That's the next step, and I think that then we'll call that located and installed, and then the bezel can go in. Okay, quick update. This is going to be the bracket that goes underneath the radio. And what I did was I measured the holes from the Metra kit, marked them out, drilled out a couple of holes, then tack welded a couple of nuts on the back, a couple of captive nuts, so that this can get mounted in the car. I can locate it and then bolt it into the existing dashboard structure, and then this becomes a hard stop for the radio, not a flimsy bracket or some sort of, you know, I don't know, I've seen some flexi stuff. I mean, those are fine, but I want this to be a little more, you know, substantial, so I went ahead and I think it's like 18 gauge steel maybe. It's just an L bracket, so it's going to sit in there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mount this to the radio, slide it back in, and test fit it. And then we still have to mount it somehow to the dashboard. I haven't figured that out yet because it's going to be plastic to metal, and it's fiddly in there. And I don't know. Not sure how that's going to work. Haven't planned that far ahead. I may have to notch this out or something. There's going to be, I don't know. We'll see. Let's just get it in there first. We'll figure it out. All right, back in the cockpit. So just a recap, bonded the plastic glider from the single din using a drop plate. Pulled some bolts in there, used the original screw hole, mounted this gets it all level. Then I made this bracket, and this bracket, while ugly, is my way around not screwing it into the plastic of the dashboard, just because, I don't know, I'm sure you could do that and it's probably better than what I just did here because this was a lot of work. and it's pretty janky, even though it's pretty sturdy. And so this is going to go in here. And what I'd love to do someday is make these 3D printed out of plastic so that they could be a kit, you know, because to be honest with you, and then you just tech screw it in. And to be honest with you, it's really nice. And if it were out of some high strength kind of plastic, this whole thing with that T-bar and everything, maybe they already do make it. But there's enough of these cars out there that if you guys are interested, maybe we'll look into doing that. But right now, just using a couple of self-tappers, which in the metal, I'm okay with those. But when you get into, you've got to be kidding me, that's hitting. And that's going to push it up out of the way. When you get into, oh no, there we go. Into the plastic though, I'm not a fan of, you know, self-tappers in that area, because there's just that's a thin wall of plastic, and all it takes is just a couple of in and outs and it's already wallered out, you know. But metal tends to be a little more forgiving. Alright, so that's my mounting bracket. It's a little bit, it gives a little, and I would really rather it not, but what are you gonna do? So now I could probably put more bracing in there along this edge, and then that would make this a real solid bracket, because right now that edge right there has got a little bit of give, but it forces it up against the back of the bezels, and I really like it. It's really solid right here where you're pushing. I'm pressing pretty darn hard on that, and I like it. So the radio will slide in, but I'm not going to put it in right now. And then it slides in on this rail, it screws in here, and it's in, and it's not going anywhere. I still have some things to do in here, so what I'm going to do next is wire up the backup camera, wire up the couple of the accessories, and then plug it in, put the bezel in, and I'll bring you guys back in and we'll call that done. And I might look into this bracket. I'd love to see comments that say, hey, yeah, I'd love that bracket if it were made out of 3D printed, you know, high strength plastic, and where it didn't give as much. And I'll do all the tweaking and stuff, and we'll figure that out if there's any interest in that. But for now, it's just a homemade metal bracket just to serve a purpose and be a proof of concept, because as it stands now, there wasn't anything other than the bezel kit and the Metra kit to at least that didn't really apply to this. You got to do a lot of cutting and stuff, and so this is just what I came up with. And I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos already on guys who have done other things, and they're just as good, if not better. So this is the way I tackled it. Hey, you might ask yourself, you're wearing a different coat at the end of this video, and then you might ask yourself, where's a whole bunch of the video and the bracket making and the installation of the radio? Well, your guess is as good as mine. So I'm in the shop right now after I'm kind of editing this video as we speak, coming out here to kind of to film like a summary and a wrap up of it, because I have no idea where the footage went. It was in there, in this thing right here, this camera, and then it wasn't anymore. So let's take a look at the radio. I've made a bracket, I installed it, you saw that in the video. Then you saw nothing else after that. So what I'm going to do is just explain to you how I finished it out. I did use the bracket, I did screw it in and bolt it in just the way you saw it as I was putting in the fasteners, and then I wrapped it up by installing the radio and popping the bezel in, and that's pretty much it. What I want to say is that I love the way it sits in there. It's very tight to the way it mounts. It doesn't wiggle. Everything, all the base mount, all that stuff is the same, and that's the way it went in. So with no further ado, all I did was pop the bezel in, and I used I didn't change any of the buttons though, because a lot of guys use those, the double and they move all the different accessories. I didn't do that. I just used the blanks that I found at the junkyard because I just want to keep it simple. So I'm going to get you in there and take a look. All right. So here's where we ended up with it. As you can see, really clean install, very firm install. It's not going anywhere. It really, I mean, this stuff always creaks, but it really looks cool. I like it. It fits in there. The shifter, when it's in park, you know, you can't even get access those things anyway. But I just like the way this dash came out. So this basically wraps up the dash. Color change. Now I haven't changed anything else yet, so we'll be doing that on future episodes. But as you can see, it's just a really cool looking dash. Now, Ford may have come out with a burgundy color in the maybe the square SN95 New Edge or whatever. I don't know. I really don't. I kind of lost track. But if they, in this body style, they had a red interior and it was bright red, and this is where we're going with it. So that's the end of this episode. Hopefully there's enough material that gives you some ideas on how I did it and how it went in. Now, I'm just going to walk you through what I did with the wiring for the camera. The wiring came in along here. I brought it in, came down the wiring harness. I came up the middle, and then I went from here, made a, go right hand turn there, and then went into the back of the stereo through the center console. I didn't want to go up and around the dashboard or anything like that. So this is the backup camera here. It's zip tied into the wiring harness. It goes back into the car. It chases along the factory harness so that it's not really laying anywhere that it can get damaged, because it seems like a pretty flimsy little wire. And then it's zip tied along in here, following the other harness, following this to try and keep this, because there's nothing that goes in here. There's no trim piece or anything on these cars. So I'm just going to try and keep it along here. It comes up and goes into the trunk lid. And then the camera will mount here. It all works. It looks pretty good. This is got a night vision. It's got a night vision on there. It's pretty sweet. And then we'll put the new lights in here we got from LMR. And we're going to call it good. The reason why it's not all fastened down or anything, and of course, unfortunately, I think I have to like rip apart half of my zip ties and all that stuff, is because I'm going to be taking this trunk lid off and painting it. I don't know, maybe I won't take it off. We'll see. Yeah, actually I do have to, because and I'm going to explain why. That's the seam sealer from the factory. So all that needs to be done, and if I can't do it on the car, which I'm going to have to paint the bottom side of this, all this has to come off so I can paint it, because I don't want to do this. You see, whoever did this, and they sprayed this car, and it looks nasty. So I'm going to do this one pretty good, I guess. We're going to do a good paint job, and we'll walk you through that as well. You can see all the seam sealer. So with that, I want to say thank you for all the folks that I've met in the last few weeks. I just got back from a Florida trip, and that video is coming pretty soon. So just a little sneak peek is we took a break on the stinky Mustang to work on a smashed up CRV. So if you park in a church parking lot and you think you're safe, you are not. So with that said, I just want to thank you guys very much for watching. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the new subscribers and all the folks that I've met at the dealerships and all the O'Reillys and stuff there down in Stuart, Florida. I just want to say thank you very much for jumping along on the ride on this car, and I'll see you on the next one.